Hello class 9th, this video is for you. Lesson 5, The Happy Prince. Now introduction of the lesson. This story is about a prince. When the prince was alive, he was very happy. After his death, a big statue of his was erected on a pedestal. From there, the statue of prince could see the entire city, and at that time he saw the miseries of people. He saw the poor people, the homeless, their hunger and starvation. The prince was sad to see all these miseries, sadness of the people. So, in this chapter, we will study the story of this prince. Now, this is the pic. Summary. Once in a town there lived a prince. He was called the Happy Prince because he had been happy all his life. After his death, his statue was erected on a tall pedestal in the middle of the town. The statue was covered with gold and had two precious sapphire stones embedded in the eyes. A ruby stone had been fitted into the handle of his sword, for from there he could see all around the place and realized that the people lived in a lot of poverty and misery. This sight saddened the prince, and being helpless, he would weep to see the plight of his people. एक बार एक शहर में प्रिंस रहता था। वो खुश रहता था। क्योंकि उसने कभी परेशानी देखी ही नहीं थी और इसलिए उसका नाम हैप्पी प्रिंस था। लेकिन उसकी डेथ के बाद में उसकी एक बड़ी स्टैचू को बना दिया गया, एक ऊंचे से पेडेस्टल पर रख दिया गया। और इससे क्या था, और जो उसकी स्टैचू थी, और ये मिडिल ऑफ द टाउन में था, शहर के बीचों बीच था, और इसकी स्टैचू जो थी दैट वाज कवर्ड विद गोल्ड लीफ। जो उसका पूरा शरीर था, जैसे स्कर्ट की जगह या कुछ है, उसमें सारे के अंदर गोल्ड की पत्तियां लगी हुई थी, लीव्स लगी हुई थी। और उसके जो जो दैट इज़ प्रेशियस सफ़ायर स्टोन्स जो थे एम्बेडेड इन हिज आइज़। इसका मतलब दोनों आँखों के अंदर सफ़ायर लगे हुए थे। रूबी जो थी उसकी तलवार की जो हैंडल होता है उसमें लगी हुई थी, और वहाँ से खड़े होकर वो सब कुछ देख सकता था। लेकिन वो ये महसूस कर रहा था कि अब वो किसी की हेल्प नहीं कर पाएगा। ओके। और चारों तरफ उसके जो लोग हैं वो बहुत गरीब हैं और दुखी हैं। दिस साइट सैडेंड द प्रिंस। और ये जो साइट थी उसने प्रिंस को बहुत उदास बना दिया। ओके। और हेल्पलेस बना दिया। ही वुड वीप टू सी द प्लाइट ऑफ दिस पीपल। और इस तरह से हिज पीपल और अपने शहर के लोगों की दुर्दशा को देखकर उसका उसकी जो था वो बहुत परेशान हो जाता था। ओके। नाउ द नेक्स्ट इज one day a swallow bird was flying through the city on its way to Egypt to meet his friends. On the way, it took a shelter for the night at the feet of the statue of the Happy Prince. The bird realized that the statue was weeping, and upon inquiry, realized the plight of the prince. The helpless prince requested the bird to help it, but by becoming its messenger. अब यहाँ पर क्या हुआ कि जो बर्ड थी वो उसको दैट इज़ इजिप्ट में से होकर दैट इज़ थ्रू द सिटी ऑन इट्स वे टू इजिप्ट। उसको इजिप्ट जाना था और उस शहर में से होकर जाना था अपने दो फ्रेंड से मिलने के लिए। और उसको रास्ते में क्या हुआ कि उसको रात आ गई और उसको रुकना पड़ा। और उसने हैप्पी प्रिंस की जो स्टैचू थी उसने सोचा कि अगर रात को ठंड लगेगी या कुछ होगा तो उसके नीचे शेल्टर मिल जाएगा ताकि उसके ऊपर बर्फ़ नहीं गिरेगी या कुछ है। लेकिन जब वो रात को सोने के लिए रुकने के लिए वहाँ पर रुकी तो उसने देखा कि जो प्रिंस की स्टैचू है उसमें से आंसू निकल रहे हैं। और जब उसने देखा तो और उसने जानने की कोशिश की तो उसको प्रिंस का दुख जो था वो दिखाई दिया। प्रिंस उसको बहुत हेल्पलेस लगा और प्रिंस ने बर्ड से रिक्वेस्ट की कि वो उसका मैसेंजर बन जाए। मैसेंजर संदेश वाहक और या संदेश देने वाला। After initial refusal, the bird agreed and took the ruby stone out of the sword hilt and delivered it to the poor seamstress. और उसने क्या किया, उसने जब काफ़ी मना करने के बाद भी बर्ड फिर मान गई। पहले तो मना करती रही लेकिन उसके बाद में उसने रूबी स्टोन को लिया, उसकी तलवार की जो हिल्ट थी, जो पकड़ने वाला हिस्सा था, वहाँ से निकाला और उसको एक सीमस्ट्रेस को मीन जो सिलाई करती थी, जो गाउन वगैरह बनाती थी, उसको दे दिया। द नेक्स्ट मॉर्निंग एज ही वेंट टू बिड गुड बाय द स्टैचू कन्विंस्ड हिम टू स्टे बैक फॉर वन मोर डे। That day the bird was asked to remove the sapphire stone from one of the statue's eyes and delivered it to the young playwright. Also On the third day, the bird had to pull out the second sapphire stone for a poor match girl. अब उसने क्या हुआ अगले दिन, उसने फिर जब उसने कहा कि उसको गुड बाय कहने के लिए बर्ड जो थी वो उसको गुड बाय कहना चाहती थी हैप्पी प्रिंस की स्टैचू को, लेकिन उसने फिर उसको कन्विंस कर लिया कि तुम एक रात और रुक जाओ। और उसके लिए उसने जो उसका सफ़ायर था जो कि उसकी आंखों में था, उसमें से एक निकाल कर उसने जो एक यंग प्ले राइट मीन्स जो प्ले लिखने वाला था लड़का, लेकिन वो बहुत गरीब था, उसको दे दिया। और जो तीसरा था उसने एक पुअर जो माचिस बेचने वाली लड़की थी, मैच गर्ल थी, उसको दे दिया। Okay, by this time the weather had become cold and the bird had developed an attachment with the statue. The bird did not want to leave the statue, which had now become blind. The happy prince asked the bird to go round the city and inform him the condition of the people living there. The bird told him that the rich were making merry while the poor lived in misery. उसके बाद में उसकी दोनों आंखें चली गईं। बर्ड जो थी वो इमोशनल हो गई, उसने कहा कि नहीं वो वहीं रुक जाएगी। तो प्रिंस ने कहा, हैप्पी प्रिंस ने कहा कि अच्छा तुम एक काम करो, तुम शहर में जाओ चारों तरफ और देखो कि लोगों की हालत क्या है। तो बर्ड ने वैसा ही किया और बताया कि जो अमीर लोग हैं वो तो एंजॉय कर रहे हैं लाइफ को, लेकिन जो गरीब लोग हैं वो बहुत सफ़र कर रहे हैं। उसने ऐसा उसको बताया। ओके, now then, that is, as the happy prince did not have any more precious stones, he ordered the bird to remove the gold foils from his body and distribute among the living who needed money for survival. तो उसने बर्ड से कहा कि तुम मेरे शरीर के ऊपर लगे हुए जो सोने के फॉयल्स हैं, लीव्स हैं, वो एक एक करके निकालो और गरीबों को बांट दो। Gradually, the statue of the prince lost its covering of the gold and became dull and the grey. On the other hand, the poor became joyous as they got bread to eat. The swallow bird was now unable to withstand the cold weather and realized that death was approaching it. उसके बाद में एक एक करके उन्होंने उस गरीबों को बांट दिया और इससे क्या हो गया है कि उनकी जो फाइनेंशियल कंडीशन थी वो बेटर हो गई और उनको कुछ खाने के लिए चीज़ें मिलने लगीं। लेकिन अब बर्ड जो थी वो ठंड बर्दाश्त नहीं कर पा रही थी और उसने ये सोच लिया कि अब उसकी मृत्यु जो है वो नज़दीक है। इन्फॉर्म्ड इसमें लास्ट है, दैट इज़ अप्रोचिंग इट। इन्फॉर्म्ड द स्टैचू, that is informed the statue, the bird informed the statue that it had to leave, and the statue who loved the bird asked it to kiss him. As the bird died and fell at the statue's feet, a strange sound came out of the statue, the sound of the breaking of its heart. Although the statue's heart was made of lead, it broke as it was overwhelmed with the affection towards the bird. उसके बाद में उसने कहा कि अब मुझे जाना है, और जाने से पहले उसने उसको कहा कि मैं तुम्हें किस करना चाहती हूँ। हु लव्ड द बर्ड आस्क्ड इट टू किस हिम, लेकिन जो स्टैचू थी उसने कहा कि तुम मुझे किस करो, दैट इज़। और उसके बाद में जैसे उसने उसको किस किया तो बर्ड जो थी, दैट इज़ बर्ड डाइड एंड फेल एट द स्टैचूज़ फीट, और उसका जो दिल था उसमें से बहुत स्ट्रेंज आवाज़ आई और उसमें जो उसका जो दिल था वो दो हिस्सों, जो कि लेड का बना हुआ था, वो दो हिस्सों में टूट गया, फट गया। Although the statue's heart was made of lead, lead means shisha, that is, okay, glass. It broke as it was overwhelmed with affection towards the bird. वो भावनाओं से भरा हुआ था, फीलिंग से भरा हुआ था, किसके लिए? बर्ड के लिए। When the statue was melted in the furnace, the heart did not melt and was thrown in the garbage. जब स्टैचू को मेल्ट किया गया, क्योंकि वो उसकी बनी हुई थी, मेटल की बनी हुई थी, तो उसका जो हार्ट था वो मेल्ट नहीं हुआ, उन्होंने उठाकर उसको गार्बेज में फेंक दिया। इट लैंडेड नियर द स्वेलोज बॉडी, लेकिन वो ये वही जगह थी जहाँ पर स्वेलो की बॉडी को फेंका गया था। गॉड्स एंजल टू बोथ द डेड स्वेलो एंड द ब्रोकन हार्ट टू हिम एज दे वर द मोस्ट प्रेशियस थिंग्स ऑन लैंड। और उसके बाद में जो जो मतलब बर्ड की डेड बॉडी और जो उसका जो उसका दिल था, उनको वहाँ से उठा लिया गया। किन्होंने उठाया? गॉड्स के जो एंजल्स थे, क्योंकि उनके अकॉर्डिंग उस दुनिया के अंदर वो दो चीज़ें सबसे ज़्यादा कीमती थीं। अब इसके हैं क्वेश्चन आंसर्स, ठीक है। अब इसके क्वेश्चन आंसर्स देखिए, पेज 36 पे दिया गया है। वाई डू द कोर्टियर्स call the prince the happy prince. Is he really happy? What does he see all around him? The courtiers called the prince the happy prince because he was always happy. When he was alive, he did not know what tears were, for he lived in a palace where sorrow was not allowed to enter. However, when he died and was made into the statue, he was not happy, and tears flowed down his eyes on seeing the state of his city. He could see all the misery and ugliness of the city around him. Next page. Second question. Why does the happy prince send a ruby for the seamstress? What does the swallow do in the seamstress house? The happy prince sent a ruby for the seamstress, as she was extremely poor and could not feed her child who was suffering from fever. The swallow, on being persuaded by the prince, went to the seamstress's house. She had fallen asleep too, so the swallow kept the ruby on the table where the woman worked. He then flew round the bed, fanning the boy's forehead with his wings. This made the boy this made the boy feel relaxed and he went to sleep. Question number 3. For whom does the prince send the sapphire and why? Answer. The happy prince sent the sapphires for the two people, the young writer across the city and the match girl. The young writer was trying to finish a play for the director of the theater. However, he was too cold to write anymore. There was no fire in the grate, and the hunger had made him faint. He sent the sapphire to the young playwright so that he could sell it to the jeweler, buy firewood, and finish his play. On seeing the sapphire, the young man felt appreciated and believed that he could finish his play. The happy prince then saw a little match girl who was standing in the square just below him. She had let her matches fall in the gutter, because of which they were all spoiled. The prince knew that her father would beat her if she did not bring home some money. When the swallow slipped the jewel into the palm of the little girl's hand, she ran home happy and laughing. She ran home happily and laughing. Question number 4. What does the swallow see when it flies over the city? When the swallow flew over the city, it saw the stark contrast of plenty and poverty. It saw rich men making merry, oblivious to the plight of the poor down the lane. It saw their condition. It saw condition of the poor when they are denied even a sound sleep by police patrolling the street. Like here, इसमें जो बच्चों दिया गया है यहाँ पर देखो, इसे मैं थोड़ा सा करेक्ट करती हूँ आपको. इट सॉ द रिच मैन मेकिंग मैरी ओब्लिवियस टू द प्लाइट माने दुख, गरीब लोगों के दुख को उस लेन में देखने के बजाय. देन इट सॉ दैट इज़ द पुअर कंडीशन. ओके, इसको यहाँ पर लो. इट सॉ the poor condition of poor. It means miserable condition भी आप लिख सकते हो वहाँ पर. And they denied even a sound sleep by the police patrolling the street. इसका और वो आराम से सो भी नहीं पाते थे क्योंकि पुलिस वहाँ पर पेट्रोलिंग करते थे. Question number 5. Why did the swallow not leave the prince and go to the Egypt? Since the prince had given away the two sapphires of his eyes, he had become blind. Therefore, the swallow decided to stay with the prince always. It could be inferred that the swallow was so touched by the prince's kindness that he decided to stay back rather than flying to Egypt and be with his friends. What this suggests is that kind hearted people always attract friends who will stay with them forever. Question number 6. What are the precious things mentioned in the story? Why are they precious? The precious things mentioned in the story are the leaden heart of the happy prince and the dead bird. They are precious because both the happy prince and the swallow were very kind, generous, and selfless. The prince could not bear to see the ugliness, misery, and sufferings in his city, and so gave away all his precious stones and gold to make his people happy. Similarly, the swallow sacrificed his trip to Egypt and acted as the prince's messenger, carrying the precious stones and gold to the needy, spreading happiness around. When the prince was blind, he still loved him so much that he never left him, even though it kept getting colder and colder with winter approaching. Finally, when he could no longer bear the cold, he died at the feet of the statue, and the statue loved him so much that its leaden heart broke into two. That is why, when God asked one of the angels to bring him the two precious things in the garden, and the largest look, the leaden heart and the dead body, and and God said that it is in his garden of paradise the little bird shall sing forever, more than in the city of the gold the happy prince shall praise God. Now, children, long questions. Okay. Why is the frost called a dreadful hard forest? Answer. The frost has been called hard because the snow had hardened due to the cold. Further, it was refers to the swallow had wanted to migrate to that is the climate in the Egypt. It had stayed back at the first, unwilling to help, and poor people by delivering the ruby, sapphire, and the gold leaf that had covered the statue of the prince. Later on, once Prince was left without eyes to see, decided to stay to keep him company. In the process, he succumbed to the cold weather and lost his life. इसका मतलब वो ठंड की वजह से उसकी डेथ हो गई. On finding his friend dead, the statue broke, revealing his leaden heart. Thus, the death of these two selfless heroes cast a gloomy atmosphere. Question number 2. What are the two most precious things that the angels find in the city? The two most precious things that the angels pick up from the city are the dead swallow and the lead heart to the company. They picked these two. They picked these two because both the bird and the swallow had gone beyond their selfish interest and lost their eyes serving the poor and the trodden caste. The bird had sacrificed his life. The bird had sacrificed. The bird had cancelled his plans. Children, pay attention here. The bird had cancelled his plan to migrate to warmer climate of the winter, staying back to help deliver valuables as directed by the statue to those who were in dire need. Dire need means too much need. After the statue gave away his sapphire eyes and became blind, he did not have the heart to fly away from his friend. Instead, he died in his attempt to keep him a company. Similar, the statue had selfless origin, love all the valuables that covered his mind, that covered his body to help the poor and hungry people in the city. It made him extremely sad to see their misery, so he chose to give them everything he had. When at last his friend the swallow died, he was completely broken and his heart cracked into two. The angels valued their sacrifice and charitable acts and chose them as the most precious things. Why did the courtiers call the prince the happy prince? Was he really happy? What does he see all around him? Answer. The prince had been called a happy prince when he had been alive. At that time he lived a sheltered and a privileged life with no inkling of the suffering faced by the common people. After his death, when his statue was placed on a high column overlooking the city, he was able to see the misery and unhappiness of the people. The poverty and the ugliness all around made him extremely unhappy. Therefore, with the help of the swallow, he tried to compensate for the neglect which he had shown his subjects while he had been alive. Thus, he was not happy looking at the misery of the people, but by giving away all his valuables and keeping the poor people, his sadness would have been somewhat abated. Question number 4. Comment on the title of the story. Was the prince really happy? The title is an ironical one as it suggests that the story is about the prince who is happy. However, the reader soon realized that the prince is not a human but a statue. The prince had been called a happy prince when she had been alive. At that time, he lived a sheltered and privileged life with no inkling of their suffering faced by the common people. After his death, the statue was placed on the high color overlooking the city. Since the statue was placed at the high point, he could see all the misery and sadness in the city, which made him sad. How do the councillor and the mayor react on seeing the broken statue? Answer. The councillor and the mayor called the statue shabby because all the gold and the precious stones no longer decorated it. They felt that without these embellishments, the statue looked like that of a beggar. Moreover, they felt that the dead swallow at its feet added to the shabby condition of the statue. Thus, since the statue was no longer beautiful or useful, it should be pulled down and melted in the furnace. However, its lead heart did not melt, which was finally thrown into the garbage heap with the dead swallow's body. Question number 6. Men melt down the statue, yet the angels proclaim it one of the most precious things in the city. Comment on the divergent viewpoint of the angels and the humans with reference to the story द हैप्पी प्रिंस. बच्चों ये क्वेश्चन समझ में आया. इस क्वेश्चन में कहा गया है कि जब उसके जो लेड का हार्ट था उसको पिघला दिया गया, उसके बाद भी एंजल्स ने कहा कि ये दुनिया में पाई जाने वाली सबसे ज़्यादा कीमती चीज़ है, वन ऑफ द मोस्ट प्रेशियस. ओके, तो दैट इज़ लाइक एंजल्स एंड द ह्यूमंस विद रेफरेंस टू द स्टोरी द हैप्पी प्रिंस. कमेंट ऑन द डाइवर्जेंट ऑन द व्यू पॉइंट कि उनके व्यू पॉइंट क्या थे एंजल्स के और ह्यूमंस के. Like here, humans are attracted to the material things and tend to appreciate only outer beauty. Thus the statue was considered beautiful when it was covered with gold leaf and the precious stones like rubies and the sapphires. However, when it was stripped of the gold and the jewels, they declared that it was shabby and should be pulled down. On the other hand, the angels looked into the mind and the heart of all the creatures and valued quality like charity, selflessness, and kindness above any external material. In this story, they have two very noble characters, the swallow and the statue, the, who together help out several people, poor people in the city, uh, quietly without एक्सपेक्टिंग प्रेज और एक्लेम. कि कुछ लोग जो सेवा करते हैं उनको बदले में किसी चीज़ की प्रशंसा की है किसी की ज़रूरत नहीं होती है. द स्टैचू गिव्स एवरी वैल्यूएबल पार्ट दैट कैन हेल्प समवन even though it makes him look shabby and he goes blind. The swallow also rises his life by on staying on in the cold weather instead of flying to climate like warmer climes like its friends. Instead, it stays back and helps the prince alleviate the suffering of the several people in the city. Thus, their actions make them the most precious things in the city. और ये आपके नोट्स ख़त्म हो गए हैं. इसमें क्वेश्चन आंसर्स मैंने लॉन्ग भी दे दिए. लॉन्ग क्वेश्चंस आपको हेल्प करेंगे छोटे आंसर लिखने के लिए भी, और अपने आप को वर्ड लिमिट के अंदर डालना शुरू करो. ओके, आप ऐसा नहीं कि बड़ा आंसर लिखोगे तो ज़्यादा मार्क्स मिलेंगे, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. मार्क्स उसके पढ़ने के अकॉर्डिंग है. ओके चिल्ड्रन, नाउ दैट इज़ इट इज़ ओवर. टेक केयर, बाय.